Hello, human collective. Welcome to the Upside to Grief. My name is Story, and I am your host. Today on the podcast, we have my mom, Jo Story.
Hi.
Welcome on. My mom is a therapist in the mental health field. She has been my entire life, for the most part. And today we are going to talk about some experiences with her own personal grief journey. So, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to be on here. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So, who are we going to be talking about today?
We're going to talk about my baby brother.
Okay. Who is your baby brother?
His name is Leroy.
Okay. And who was Leroy?
Well, who was Leroy? I don't know. I mean, I think he was a human that wanted to help people a lot. He had been living down in Mississippi for quite a long time, 30 years probably, maybe. He was working in the car industry and had a daughter. Well, obviously she's still here, but
Yeah.
so when he passed, she was 11, so she was still very young. But she was in his entire world. That's kind of where he was at in life. It was his only child. He was never married, and so she was definitely the love of his life.
Yeah. What was life like growing up with Leroy? Because he, in relation to you, where does he fit in that sibling plan?
So he's the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
He's 7 years younger than I am. He's 4 years younger than my sister, who's the middle child.
Okay.
So he was the only boy. So he was a spoiled brat. Being the only boy. And I very much was like a second mom to him growing up. I took care of him a lot. My mom was always working several jobs. So I was cleaning and cooking and taking care of my siblings.
Yeah.
From a pretty young age.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he very much was into video games, kind of roughhousing, very much Gen X male, I guess is kind of the easiest way to. He liked cars and that kind of stuff, so.
Mm-hmm. And you said he was in Mississippi for 30 years.
Yeah, about that. My mom, and he moved with my mother down to Mississippi, and I want to say he was about around 15.
I was wondering when he had went down there because my memories of Leroy, I think, are just in Mississippi.
I want to say you were probably about 4 or 5 when they moved to Mississippi.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember him before that, so.
Yep. And so he...
But you guys grew up here.
Yep, in St. Paul. We grew up
Yeah.
in St. Paul. And then they had moved up north to Hinckley, Minnesota. And they were up there for a while. And then from there, they moved down to Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And
when I say here, I mean Minnesota, which actually we're not even in Minnesota right now, so I'm not really sure why I said here. We're actually in Denver, Colorado, but we're from Minnesota. So,
Yep.
All right. So you guys grew up in Minnesota,
Yep.
And then when he was about 15, he
Yep.
moved with Grandma, your mom,
Yep, to Mississippi.
And
then he lived there basically until he died. The last couple of months of his life, we had moved him from Mississippi to Florida, where my mom lives, in order for us to care for him.
Why did they move to Mississippi?
Grandpa and her went down there to help open the new Grand Casino.
Because they were working at the Grand Casino in Minnesota.
Yep. They went down there to help open that casino.
Okay. I never put that together.
And he was the only one still.
Under the age of 18, right? Or how old
John and Rochelle moved down there with them. So they went with 3 kids. Patty and I stayed here.
Okay.
And John and Rochelle are step siblings. So my mom remarried when I was, I don't know, maybe you were just born when Grandma and Grandpa got married. So I was 20 when they got married. So he had John and Rochelle. So John and Rochelle and Leroy moved down to Mississippi with Grandma and Grandpa. Patty and I weren't living at home, so obviously we were here. I had my own family. I had both you and Justin, and was married to your dad.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Which was really tough for me at that point. It was really hard for me to have them move away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Yep.
So then, what did your relationship with them look like moving down to Mississippi?
So I think, obviously I stayed close with my parents. I talked to them all the time. Teenage boys, Leroy's a teenage boy. I'm, married and have children. And, but when we were growing up, my relationship with Leroy was very much that second mom. I took care of him a lot. I was even caught sleepwalking, carrying him down the stairs with all of his clothes to get him ready for school. And so there was just a lot of this, like, he felt almost like my child a lot of the times when we were younger. And then, once he got older and was a teenager and obviously didn't need that care, that wasn't happening anymore. I think when they moved to Mississippi, I think with the age he was at that time, created like a separation. There wasn't a ton at that time that we had in common with me having kids and him being a teenager.
Yeah.
Right? We were at different
points of your life. Yeah.
Yep. So, that created some distance in our relationship. There wasn't a ton to really talk about. It wasn't like he was calling me on the phone all the time or anything like that. But as he got older and when he had gotten into the relationship with the mom of his daughter, we started talking more, right? There was more in common then. He had a kiddo. She already had some kids, so there's like a built-in family there. And then, his daughter came along, and so there was more in common there. And he reached out to me a lot more than I reached out to him. He would call, and, he was the one who initiated, I would say, probably 80% of the contact between the two of us at that point. So I have a lot of guilt around that.
Yeah.
The household that we grew up in wasn't a happy home. There's a lot of abuse that happened. I don't talk to my biological father anymore. And as Leroy got older, the way he spoke and his voice reminded me a lot of my biological father. And it made it really hard to talk to him. And so there were times that he would call that I just was like, I can't do it right now. I'll call him later. And then I would get busy and I wouldn't call him back. My sister Patty talked to him a lot more than I did on the phone. And it's not that I didn't love him or didn't care or didn't want to talk to him. It was just really hard for me to talk to him.
Yeah.
I felt pretty triggered when I would talk to him.
I think, your relationship in that household as opposed to your sister's relationship in that household with you being the oldest sibling, it looks different.
Yeah,
You probably remember a bit more than your sister remembers growing up, like, because you were older, you know
yeah,
what I mean? So you were able to comprehend the situation for a longer amount of time, as opposed to, not that they didn't understand what was going on, but
yeah,
you understood what was going on for a lot longer than they did and remember it more than they did. And so, I mean, that makes sense that it's more difficult for you to have that relationship with your brother than it is for your sister to have that
yeah.
relationship with your brother, which, I mean,
And I also think there was m- more of the abuse from my biological father was directed at me and grandma. Not that the other two didn't at times experience that with him.
mhm,
Um, but I think that plays a lot in why it was harder for me and why I got triggered, or,
mhm.
and I guess I don't know. I haven't talked to her about that. I don't. She's never mentioned that when we've had
Who?
conversations. My sister Patty,
Okay.
because I have had the conversation with her about how there's so much guilt that I have about not really working, doing better to work on that relationship, managing my own stuff so that I could engage in that relationship more, because it was so triggering for me. And she's not mentioned that it was for her. And so
Mhm,
I think part of that was like just possibly because Pat, my bio dad, directed more of that abuse in my direction and grandma's.
mhm,
And I also very much had to physically get in between my parents. Like, I mean, it was a lot, you know.
mhm,
Um, and so I don't know. I don't think it was that way for her, but for me, it was. And it took me a while to realize that that's what that was,
mhm,
you know. And then I was like, I kind of had a light bulb moment where I'm like, why do I avoid his calls sometimes, you know? Why do I not want to answer? And I think talking to him a couple of times once I kind of started noticing that there was a pattern there, that I realized it was because I was getting triggered when I was talking to him. And so it was just uncomfortable. It wasn't obviously the conversation that was uncomfortable. It was just
what it was bringing up for
what it was bringing up
you,
for
how
me.
it felt for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, honestly, that's just a shit situation. There's no It's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
Like, you kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Children doing adult things. Yeah.
Children doing adult things. Yeah. Yeah. So, so he's down in Mississippi. He's got his kiddo. He's got the other kids. I mean,
Well, this.
we went down there quite a bit.
Yeah. Yep. And you would see him a lot. Like, I mean, I
Mhm.
engaged with him when he was still living at grandma's house, and we'd go down and we'd hang out with him, and he was actively, I think, constantly searching for connections with me. He fixed the when we drove down in the minivan. Remember the brakes went out on our way there. Do you remember that? It was Thanksgiving.
I don't.
It was the Thanksgiving right after Grandpa died, and we drove down there.
I remember driving down there in the van. I don't remember the brakes going out.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, for him, he was just overjoyed to be able to do that for me, fix
Mm.
my brakes while, we were down there. And, so there, although it was very triggering, it triggered this abuse that I had. Um, he was a really loving and caring person. Like, I mean, I think, there were definitely characteristics that he had that were very much like Pat. Um, but he, I think, very much had a kind heart.
Mhm.
So that was very different.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think he was different from him.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. But when he got sick, he wasn't with his daughter's mom and the other kiddos anymore. He
Mm-hmm.
he had actually was renting a room in a house a couple blocks away, so he could be close to his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is why we had to go down there and move him because there was nobody to take care of him.
He had moved a couple houses down from the mother of his child, and he
Yes.
wasn't living with them anymore. So he just has the one kid with her, and then she had three
Yes. She had
other
three older children.
three older children. Okay, so but they're still living in the same
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Proximity is very close. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how old is his daughter at this point?
11.
She was 11 during this
Yep.
time. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So then what was going on with Leroy at the time?
He had just gotten a new job. He had been working there a couple months. He really liked it there. They really liked him there. Um, things seemed to be going good. He was getting along with the mother of his child at that point in time and was getting to see her a lot because they lived really close. So, I mean, I think for him, he was really happy. I mean, would he have changed some things? Yeah. I mean, obviously, if he was like he could have his own place, could have some custody of her, would he have preferred that? 100%. But I think in terms of how everything kind of played out and where he was at that point, like he was happy, he liked his job,
Mm-hmm.
um, and was really getting to spend some good quality time with his daughter, which made him really happy. So I mean, I think he's in a really good place.
And how old was he at this
42.
time? 42.
So, um, so then in February 8th of 2022, so in December actually of 21, I had just started a new job and I came on like actual full time the day after New Year's Day. So I had literally only been at my job a month. But I was driving home and grandma kept calling me, but I was going into the car wash and I was like, I'll call her when I get home. I'll call her when I get home. But she kept calling and then she called again while I was in the car wash and she called again while I was trying to get out of the car wash. So I'm like, I better call her. And then, so when I called her back,
Mm-hmm.
Or she must have called me back because I was instantly in a conversation with her and my sister and my brother.
Everybody was on
Everybody
the
was on the phone, so she
phone.
had
They
to have
were all
called me
trying
back.
to
They were trying to
three-way
call me.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then when we were talking, like, so he was in the hospital. I had no idea that he was not feeling well.
Did grandma know? Had he been to the hospital
So
before?
grandma knew that some stuff was going on with him. He was talking about having a lot of stomach issues, having some back pain, having problems with, but I think he kind of attributed that to he wasn't having bowel movements. And so he was attributing a lot of that pain that he was feeling like in his back and in his stomach was because he wasn't
Mhm.
going to the bathroom or whatever and other things. So he had been into the doctor a couple of times, but they didn't really look into what it was. But then he had a couple, I think 2 experiences where he um, defecated in his sleep, where he like actually went to the bathroom while he was sleeping. And so he went in one time in particular was really bad and he ended up going into the hospital, going out of the hospital.
Mhm.
And then they started running some tests to try to figure out what was happening or what was going on, causing the issue, whether there's some kind of blockage or
Yeah.
something that was in the intestines or the colon
Yeah.
or something that was causing the
So
issues.
this had happened before February 8th?
Yeah.
Or,
I
okay,
think it had actually been going on for several months
okay. And then what happened on February 8th
when they
when they
called.
called you?
So when we were on the phone, he was in the hospital, and the doctor actually came in while we were talking and was very nonchalant, and was just like, "This is stage 4 colon cancer," and da 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 whatever. And then it seemed like she was going to cut off what she was saying, and I was like, "Wait, like hold up, stop for a minute. Like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Like, did you just say that he has stage 4 colon cancer?" And she was like, "Yes." And it was very, I would just say her bedside manner wasn't great, right? It was very dry, and there was no empathy. There was no, it was just like, this is what's happening. And
It was very clinical.
yeah, yep. And so, um, pretty instantly, I felt a lot of anxiety and a lot of panic, and I instantly wanted to go down there. Um, but grandma she was leaving that day to drive there. So she's living in Florida.
Because grandma's on the phone, but she's not in the hospital with him, right? Because he's in the hospital in Mississippi.
Yep.
Grandma's in Florida.
And Patty
You
and I are
and
in
Patty are in
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay.
Yep. And so she was leaving that day to drive over to Mississippi. And then, so the plan was to wait a little bit for her to get over there, talk to the doctors, come up with the plan, figure out what are we going to do? What's the plan? And then the decision was made that he needed to move to Florida to stay with my mom, because there was nobody to take care of him in Mississippi. And he was going to have to undergo chemo radiation. Like, it was going to have to be very aggressive treatment because it had progressed so far. And so then I flew down there on the 17th of February. And then I flew to Mississippi. We were there for a couple of days. We packed up his things. We shipped some of it, and then we packed as much stuff as we could into grandma's car, which wasn't very big. And then one more, I don't remember. It was a couple of days after I had gotten there. We went and brought him to the airport. I brought him in. He was in a wheelchair at that point. And got him set up. There was going to be somebody who was going to stay with him, get him to the gate, get him on the airplane. We explained everything that was going on with him. He was having a lot of incredibly intense muscle spasms, a lot of pain. And so he needed like a heating pad to be plugged in and different things. So like we made sure he was at the front of the plane, and that they would allow him to plug in a heating pad, be able to apply it to, like his low back, and take it, like that they knew what to do with him. And then once they kind of wheeled him off with the person, I hopped back in the car with grandma, and we boogied it to Florida. And then her boyfriend picked him up at the airport, and then like fed him dinner, got him to her house, and then we got there that night. So, and then I was down there for 3 weeks. I was down there initially, right around 3 weeks, maybe a day or two more.
So did he start doing chemo in Florida?
It was, no, he never did chemo. We got him into, I can't remember the name of the place. It's a pretty big hospital in Tampa that is well known for treatment. So we had to wait a little bit, a couple weeks, to get an appointment there. And then we went in and met with that provider, and they were going to try this injection instead of like the chemotherapy route. They wanted to try that first.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember when we went and saw that doctor, because I hadn't really talked to any doctors prior to that. This was like the first doctor's appointment I was going to with him. Um, and throughout my life, I have had to care for people that have had cancer. I've been around a lot of sick people in my life. I understand what they're saying to me. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot. Your brother was really sick when he was little. Like, I understand. I'm really good at advocating in those situations. And, like, I want to know, like, what is it? What's the plan? What can we do? I get very solution focused. And I think that's a way that I manage my anxiety, um, is to try to control the situation and figure out a plan and a solution and how do we make this better. And so up until that point, I don't think I knew it was stage 4, and I know stage 4 is bad. But I wasn't sure, like, how bad was it? Like the beginning of stage 4? Was it the end of stage 4? Like, how much had it spread? Like, what was the deal when I got down to Mississippi, he had already had a colostomy baby put on, so he wasn't going to the bathroom. It was coming out through the bag and having to change the bag and all that kind of stuff. But so when we went to that doctor, when we sat in that room with him, for me, it settled in that he was not going to make it through this. I don't believe that my brother got that same message. After we sat with the doctor for a little bit and talked about stuff, we had to go down a floor or two, and he had to get some blood work done or whatever. And him and I were sitting in the waiting room, talking. And, I said to him, what would you like to do? Do you want to do the medicine, the injections? They can make you sick, they can make you feel like shit. Like, do you want to fight it? Or what do you want to do? Like, this is your life. You take the lead. I'm gonna support you with whatever it is that you want to do. And I just remember him um busting out crying and saying, like, he wanted to see his daughter grow up, and he wanted to walk her down the aisle when she got married, so he wanted to fight. And I said, okay, that's what we're going to do. And so I spent a lot of time on the telephone arguing with insurance companies, trying to get the approval to get that damn injection. And then he got too sick before we could get to that point. And so the day before I was going to leave, him and I spent the entire day on the front porch together. We cried a lot, and we laughed a lot. And I didn't want to leave. His concern was he was worried about his daughter and me and Patty and Grandma. And what were we gonna do if he died? And he was worried about us. But then that night he got really sick, and Grandma took him to the hospital, to the emergency room. And so I called and canceled my flight, and ended up staying a little bit longer. And then your Aunt Patty wasn't coming down. Her plan was to come down, I think, like April 1st, or like the last couple of days of March or something, right there around that time. And I had called her and said, you have to come down now. And So she did. She came down. And I think that was really good. I think Leroy wanted nothing more than to have some time with the three of us together. And it's really fucking shitty that it took that to do it. Um, so it was really good that the three of us got to spend some time together as siblings. And then I came home for a little bit. It was my 50th birthday, and I had my best friends flying in from Arizona. And I felt, an obligation because people were coming to see me that I needed to go home. Um, so I went home and I was home for about 2 weeks. And then they were just like, it's not, he's going fast. So I went back down. I honestly don't remember what day I flew back down there. It was towards the end of March. And then when Aunt Daff picked me up from the airport, she was like, he's nothing like when you left. And I had just left I think it was like a week and a half ago or something. And when I walked in the door, he had ballooned up from all the fluids that he was retaining, and he could no longer talk or engage with us at that point. So I really, really regret leaving and going back home. I wish I would have just could have made him a priority in that moment. But I think there was part of me that was in denial that was happening. So, and he died on April 2nd. But we were all down there with each other for, I don't know, my timetable seems all goofy. Maybe I wasn't home for 2 weeks. Because I think I was down there at least a week with Aunt Patty.
Yeah,
With him.
I don't think you were home long.
Before he, passed. And it was, at that point, it was, we were taking shifts of who was awake or at least sleeping in the recliner next to, he wanted to hospice at home. So hospice would come out to the house. He had a, pain pump thing with pain meds connected to him, and that thing kept like breaking down and not working, and we were having to call constantly, and it wasn't managing his pain well, and so it was horrible to have to watch him go through all of that. So we took turns sleeping in the recliner next to the hospital bed out in the dining room.
Mm-hmm.
And would yell for each other when we needed to, when he would wake up and be screaming in pain, and come out and help and calm him down and try to breathe and talk to him, and try to get some pain meds in him. And somebody's calling the hospice company to come out here and fix the stupid pump that you've been out here to fix multiple times. And so it's intense. It's really, really intense to care for somebody in that way. But there were a lot of neighbors who would stop by and drop things off, and grandma's sister Daff is living in the park, so she's coming over and helping out, and and other people as well, because trying to change, he would bleed from some of the tubes and things that were in him, and so we would need to change the sheets, but he had ballooned up because of the fluids he was retaining. It took like 6 people to like move him around enough to be able to change all the bedding and all of that. So it's a pretty intense experience. But on the day that he passed, grandma had decided, like, we got grandma to leave the house for a little bit, like take just a couple hours, an hour, and just take a break, take a breather. We're here, we have him. pretty quickly after she left, had the sound of his breathing changed. Um, and if folks have ever experienced taking care of anyone at the end of their life, there's this death rattle. Their breaths become much more shallow. They space out. They're
Mhm.
fewer, and so that was kind of happening. But he was also, you could tell he was in pain. He was grimacing and groaning, and at this point we couldn't really give him. The hard part about having that pain pump and where he was at in his death journey was we couldn't give him any pills. He can't swallow it. He can't swallow water, and you don't want to squirt liquid down his throat because you don't want him to choke. Um, but it was really, really difficult to continue day after day to see him like that. Um, and so the thought had crossed my mind. Do we give him more medicine? Do we help him? There's no coming back from where he's at. I don't think in our society we talk about that enough. I mean, we euthanize dogs to put them out of their pain, or when we know that their quality of life is so poor
Mhm.
that there's more pain and suffering happening. There's,
Than
like
actually
what
living. Yeah. It is legal in a few states in America. I believe like two or three.
is it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but a lot of state you go to jail,
Mhm.
you know. Um, but when you're in that position, I mean, that would have to be something that I would have had to have lived with for the rest of my life, which would have been really heavy to carry. Um,
I also think that you're not alone in having those thoughts.
yeah,
There's absolutely no fucking way.
yeah,
I've never personally been in that situation, but I would imagine I would probably be thinking the same way,
yeah.
you
I
know.
mean, it was like the mama bear in me, right? Like all of the time and all of the care and all of the love that I have given this human their whole life, especially when they were little, right? And now when he's suffering the most,
You can't do
I can't
anything.
do anything.
Mhm.
And so when my mom left the house, there was a moment that I thought about it, intentionally overdosing. But then his breathing really changed, and it became like that really deep gurgle
Mhm.
rattle. And so I called my mom and I said, "You have to come back." And she did. And he probably died about 5 minutes after she got back to the house. So,
Do you want to share about what happened after he died? What that looked like? What did you guys do?
we we kept him in the house for a while. My mom sat with him. I sat with him. My sister sat with him. We would take break even after he passed. We'd sit outside and then cry and then go inside and be with him. And I think it was up to grandma, right? Like we were just like, whatever you need to do, right? Because now she is his mom and she has just lost her baby.
Mhm.
And so whatever she needs in that moment, um, it was, up to her how long she wanted to keep him at the house. Arrangements had already been made of who was going to come and get him and what was going to happen and all of those things. So we had him there for a few hours before they came and picked him up, and Grandma wanted to be in there with him when they were moving him and carrying him out of the house. She walked out with him. That was her space to be in. And honestly, I can't even remember what we did after they took him. You know, I think people just were stopping by.
I feel like your body goes into that like disassociation shock mode of kind of separating from yourself almost. Not for everybody, but
Yeah.
you know, as like a measure of protection.
Yeah.
So you don't completely like lose your shit.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I completely agree, and that's why I'm like I don't even remember what we did. But I know there was a lot of times I would leave for like a half hour, 45 minutes, and go down to the pool and just cry in the pool. You know, because I didn't want to stress my mom out either, you know. So I'm sure we ended up at the pool at some point. I'm sure we probably had a couple of drinks. A lot of people came over. Condolences and food. So much food. Yeah, and then it was a couple of months before we had a service because he was cremated. And she wanted to do it in Minnesota. So she came up here in June. She wanted to be up here for his birthday. His birthday's June 5th. He would have been 43. So we did the service around that time, and then so she could be up here over his birthday and be around family.
Yeah.
We went out to dinner for his birthday. But it's been a lot to process that. I'm still processing 3 years later. You know, I think I still carry a lot of guilt around from all of the stuff. Feeling like I wasn't there for him like I should have been.
And how old is this kiddo now?
14.
14. Yeah. She went to Grandma's not that long ago, yeah?
Yeah. She was down there for a couple of weeks over the summer. So, and I think that's great. I think it's for both Grandma and her. You know, I think it keeps a connection for her with her dad.
Yeah.
And for Grandma, it keeps a connection with her son. You know, that part of him that's still here walking around.
Yeah.
You know, we all promised my brother, right? Like, we'll be there for her. We don't have a really close relationship with her
mom.
And that it is a very complicated story related to her mom.
Yeah.
But if you know, she was to ever reach out to me and be like, I need help, I'm gonna pick up and be there for her. So I think that's how I can honor, you know, my brother and his wishes when he was dying. He was very much into horror, and so was his daughter.
Oh, she is?
Even like, what do they call the movies when they're like bad, like B movies? Like low budget movies are like, do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah, I can't, my brain is not clicking. But, anyways, like even the really bad horror movies, obsessed with all of it, didn't matter. And she's the same way. So, at some point, I'm going to be getting a half a sleeve on this arm, and that is going to be, tributes to the people in my life that I've lost. So, grandpa, stepdad, who I considered my dad, so I'm going to have something in there for him, and Leroy, and people who have been special. So, for him, I'm going to be doing the trash polka and style of tattoo, and so I'm going to get the Freddy Krueger fingers will be in mixed in with the tattoo that will be my tribute to him.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool.
Yeah. So I talk to him a lot, out loud and in my head,
And you have some of his ashes,
I
right?
do.
They're in the rose?
Yep. Metal rose. They put it in the top of the rose and then screw in and he's hanging out in my vibe room in my house with grandpa.
And I know you and Patty will kind of process here and there.
Yeah. Yeah, when we get on that topic, we usually end up being on the phone for about 2 hours crying, which I think is good. I think the more we have that space and hold that space for each other, the more we'll process through it and get to, I don't know, I'd like to feel less guilty. I don't think I'm gonna ever get over losing him and losing.
Well, I don't think we ever get over losing anybody. I think that's just bad verbiage on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think I'm grieving the loss of the adult relationship that I really wanted to have with him, especially as his daughter was getting older, and
like you grieve the loss of like what it could have looked like.
Been.
Yeah,
because he was 42, which is really young. So yeah, it's grieving a lot of things, and there were a lot of I don't know. There's been Grandpa died in 07, and then stepbrother John died in 08.
I know them two. That was
10 months apart,
back to back.
And then Leroy. My mom's been through the shit. That's a lot. That's a lot of loss.
That's a lot of loss.
That's like super intimate relationships and close relationships.
Now, do you feel like you're processing with Grandpa Jerry as opposed to your processing with Leroy? And I know it's always different depending on the person, but do you feel, how do you feel those were different from each other, like afterwards?
I think I don't know. I feel like with Grandpa Jerry, there were just like moments, there were things that would pop up or that I would see that I would be like, oh, that's Dad.
Moments of knowing.
Yeah. And so I think that gave me a lot of comfort. And I'm having a hard time with that with my brother, and I really want it.
Not having any. Do you think you've been more closed off to processing your grief this time because of the guilt and the shame?
I think it makes it harder to process it because I have so much of that. Like, I feel like that's a barrier.
Could be a blockage
Yep.
to being able to step into that space where those moments can happen, or you allow yourself to recognize and understand them. But I think there's so much shame and guilt tied to that that it's hard to even step into that space to explore it, because immediately your brain goes
Yeah.
there into the negative, and that's difficult.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you'd been around, if you had been talking to him, you could have been on his ass about going into the doctor. We could have caught this sooner. Like, so a lot of that. That's kind of where my brain goes.
Mm-hmm. Into the what ifs.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's healthy that you're talking about it now.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's hard.
Yeah. I think the more conversations, obviously, I think with any death or loss, the more you can talk about it, I think. And especially if you talk about it with different people, different people have different insights or thoughts or energy or experiences, all kinds of things. But I think it's also helpful to process with people that know where you get stuck, to help kind of push you along.
So are there things that you think that have been helpful? Like anything that you have found to be helpful in moments of grief? So I know you've experienced different types of grief. So are there certain things that kind of are like a rock, or like a go-to of, like, if you're starting to panic or something like that? Like, do you have a go-to for how to regulate yourself and what's going on, or what has been helpful for you?
I mean, I think I am fairly good at stuffing things so I don't get at times. I'm working on that. But I mean, I think there's a time and place, right? But I think what I'm trying to do, and I think is going to be most helpful for me, is allowing myself to experience what I'm experiencing in that moment instead of
feeling your feelings when you're feeling them.
Yeah. So if I need to sit in the car and cry or scream or
instead
whatever,
of being like, I'm so busy, I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
Shove, shove, shove.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
But you tell me to feel my feelings all the time when I'm feeling them. And
so therapists are really good at helping you identify what you need to do and helping
doing it for themselves.
Yeah, we're pretty good at not being great at good self-care. But I
think we all struggle with it.
I think we live in a society that tells us not to feel our feelings and buck up and get your shit done and do what you need to do.
I mean, literally in the chapter prior to this with Erica and I, we were talking about how we both had very different experiences after recording chapter 1. Like when we shut all the lights off and shut the cameras off and everything. And I felt this like relief. Like I was like disassociating the whole time I was telling my grief journey, which I didn't realize when I was in it. So I felt like I took a deep breath when I pressed the stop button, and I looked at Erica and she was like, fuck. And I was like, nope, let it happen.
Yep.
And so I think that those things can become easier to do when you're in spaces with people who understand that and are like, they see you stopping yourself and they're like, nope, do it.
Yeah.
Even if it is uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. Um,
Yep.
but I had a friend ask me not too long ago. I'd asked them if they loved themselves, and they said no. And they asked me, "How do you start loving yourself?" And my response was, "You learn how to be uncomfortable with yourself. That's the
Hmm.
first step." And I believe that is true.
I think so too, because when I think about,
You can't just love yourself when you're feeling great
right,
and happy.
I think I think that I might get unstuck with my grief with my brother if I could learn to love that part of myself that I'm feeling a lot of guilt and shame in.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's the space I'm in now, is figuring out at the age of 53 how I was never taught how to love myself.
Mhm.
I was never told that that was a priority. Other people were always the priority. My entire life, that's how I've lived. And so right now in my life, I'm going to be selfish, which I mean, I don't
It's
really
not
think is
selfish.
selfish, but like in terms of like, I need to focus on myself.
Mhm.
I need to do, a lot of introspection and like just reflection on myself and my life and my choices and where I'm at, and how do I love every version of myself up in to today and including today and
Mhm.
tomorrow and the next day.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the space that I've been in for probably the last year.
Mhm.
Um, but it's a journey. I mean, think about the previous 52 years. I was never taught that, so it's not going to unravel itself and be magically better. And all of a sudden, I'm
No.
just in love with myself after 1 year. Because through that year, there's definitely points where you fall back into old habits where you're like
Mhm.
stuffing things and avoiding and ignoring things
Mhm.
that are happening. At this point in time, my body won't allow me to do that anymore because I get sick. So my body's kind of forcing me in a way to do it.
Hey,
Um,
we're gonna do this. The
yes.
universe is like, I
Yeah.
love you. Fuck you. Stop doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a journey.
Mhm. It is. But I think you've been making steps in the correct direction for
Yeah.
yourself over the last year, kind of like how you just said.
Yeah.
And so that can start to unravel
Yeah.
a little more and, be more intertwined in your life
Yeah.
so that you can get to those points of having those moments
Yeah.
that you've experienced before with others,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think he'd be proud of me for doing that. I know in some of the conversations that we had when he was sick was, you know, uh, some of it was all of the bullshit that I've had to put up with in my life, you
Mhm.
know, and him saying, like, you deserve to be happy. Like, you don't always have to put everybody else first. You deserve to be happy. And so I like to think that he is looking down and cheering on, the direction I'm going in.
Mhm.
So, and one day, Kim and I are going to have a lot of conversations about all of this.
Mhm.
you know, I just hope he truly knew how much I really did love him, even though it was really hard for me to be there for him for a chunk of time. It was never because I didn't love him. So I hope he knew that, and I hope he knows that now.
I feel like he does. I don't like to speak and say things that people feel or think.
Yeah.
That's not normally my take on things, but I feel like it's appropriate for me to say it with you, with him.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you guys got that time
Me too.
at the end with all of you.
Yeah. And it was, I think getting that job at the time that I did, I couldn't have asked for anything better. They were like, and I had only worked there a month, and they were amazing. And my supervisor was so supportive. Her specialty is grief. So
Imagine that.
yeah. And just the ability to go, I have to go. And she's like, you go do what you need to do. And I was like, I can't really go without money, so I got to work. And she's like, just work from down there. And if you can't work, then don't work, but go down and be with your brother. And so being able to like leave and be down there for 3.5 weeks and then come back and only be here for like a week or a week and a half and then go back again for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Like I hadn't even been there by the time I came back the second time after he died. I hadn't even worked there 6 months yet. Mm-hmm. And so I'm super thankful for that. Mm-hmm.
Things like that make me believe in humanity still.
Yeah.
People like that.
Yep.
People who get it and understand and hold space.
Yep. I mean,
for people that they don't even know, really.
I would have had to have quit my job. The job that I was at before this one, I legitimately would have quit my job to go down there to be with him. Because that was it. It was never coming back.
Yeah.
And that fucking job will be there in 3 months. So, or another job, or you know what I mean? Like, so I had to go.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the fact that I was able to do that and to be down there and spend all the time that I could spend with him. Irritate him a little bit, and he would irritate me a little bit, and that was pretty normal for us living in the same house. But really, really hard to watch several trips to the emergency room and the amount of pain that he was constantly in, and sitting in the hospital and reading to him and his Stephen King books. Yeah.
Yeah, that's heavy, but glad you got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think there was so much happening in my life at that point in time. Like really since 2020, my life was kind of been a shit show. Just one thing kind of after another. And, obviously this being part of the difficulties in the last 5 years, but I think about how much I can look back and cherish those moments with him at the end, and the conversations we got to have, and the snarky comments we got to make to each other, and sitting down and eating meals again and crying with him. Like, I'm so, so thankful I was able to do that with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I did tell him that we would all be fine eventually.
That we would all be fine eventually?
Yeah.
You and Patty and Grammy? Or
yeah,
you mean everybody?
Me, Patty, because he was so worried about what was going to happen with the three of us if he died and he wasn't here anymore.
Got it.
And so that was a promise I made to him. So I have to uphold that promise. So I need to get my shit together.
Get it together. Yeah. Yep. That's
Yeah.
that's a positive way to look at it.
Yeah. It's also something that will force me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, question that we ask everybody at the end of the podcast as we're closing out, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's in your own experience. Do you believe that there is an upside to grief, your grief?
Um, I think that every time that I've lost someone that I love, it has shifted what how I look at life, how I think about myself, like the direction I'm going. And I feel like it's always been for the better because I think those moments seem to be so impactful that I think it leads to a lot of growth for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when I think about my grief, that's the upside I find in that
The shift in yourself.
and the growth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share?
No, but I'm really happy I did this with you.
Me too.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming on. Mwah. I love you. I love you too. So next week, my mom is going to be back and we're going to be doing a segment with her. She is going to be doing QGDs, questionable grief decisions.
You don't want to miss this one.
It's going to be good. And if you've been following along with the podcast, you will have seen my QGD at the very beginning. So I'm not surprised that my mom is also choosing this segment because it's very much the apple doesn't fall far from the tree type of thing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, follow, subscribe. Thank you for tuning in. If you feel like her story resonated with you, be sure to tune in next week. And yeah, I think that's all.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.